everybody, Mike Griffith here. Welcome to today's On the Beat segment. Dog Nation back in Atlanta, back home after the trip down to Jacksonville. A successful trip for the Georgia Bulldogs and Georgia football. Georgia right back in the middle of the college football playoff hunt. Tonight, the college football rankings will come out. First ones, not sure how much they really matter. You could make the case they do, in the sense that it would establish a pecking order, and the key there would be, does Georgia come out ahead of Oregon? Because you want to play this out. What if both teams were to win out this season? You kind of want to have that inside position on the Ducks. Of course, Oregon is hoping that Utah also wins out so that they can have a marquee win, because the problem in the Pac-12 is the quality of the competition and the quality of the Oregon Ducks win. Also, Oregon lost to Auburn at a neutral site. Georgia's going to have an opportunity to beat Auburn. I think that gives Georgia a leg up. Like we all know, Georgia needs to win out to ensure themselves of the college football playoff berth. The question becomes, what if Georgia were to lose one more regular season game and then win the SEC championship game and is sitting there with 2 losses? Could they get in as a 2-loss SEC champion? That's a big question. Again, that's why that Auburn game is looming. Right now, though, Kirby Smart is really worried about the Missouri Tigers. I don't know if you read my story. There's a video inside that story of Kirby's press conference. And here was the thing I took note of. Kirby said that Barry Odom, the Missouri coach, is a guy that he's got a lot of respect for, a guy that he shares ideas with. And this is what I don't understand about Kirby Smart. Kirby runs a really tight ship. I believe he's got a championship formula. And I've been I give Kirby Smart a lot of praise. I think he does a great job. I think at 43 years old, he's way ahead of the curve. I pointed out last week, for all those Florida fans that were anointing Dan Mullen and making comparisons, Steve Spurrier did not win a national championship until his 10th year as a head coach, his 7th year with the Florida Gators. He was 51 years old. Kirby Smart is in year 4. He's 43 years old, folks. So Kirby is way ahead of the curve in that sense. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Kirby Smart's going to coach into his 60s or maybe even to his late 50s, because making $7 million a year, you really don't need to. And college football has an accelerated cycle now. And if you don't believe me, just ask Willie Taggart, who got fired midway through his 2nd season as Florida State's coach. Not a lot of patience in Tallahassee. Everybody wants it now, to the point that there were a lot of Georgia fans that were doubting Kirby Smart, that were doubting his coaching philosophy. We talked about it here on this show the last 2 weeks. And I'm not a big I told you so guy, because nobody really likes to hear that. But in today's world, where everything I say on Twitter or any opinion I take gets absolutely publicly shredded by the people who disagree, I'm going to sit here and tell you I told you so about this football game and Kirby Smart. Georgia's model for success is based on the personnel that Kirby Smart has recruited. So it really wasn't that much of a leap of faith for me, because I'm sitting here thinking, look, Kirby Smart has recruited players that fit the style of play that he wants to run. So the suggestion that he should run a different style of play with players that were recruited for his style, to me, was crazy. Of course, Georgia will be more successful running an offense that's geared towards the talent that they have. Big offensive line, great running backs, great decision maker at quarterback in Jake Fromm. Guy making his 37th game, 36th start, 37th game. Yes, Jake Fromm was going to handle the moment better than the Florida quarterback. And Trask, you saw, he's a good quarterback. I thought he played well. I mean, for a guy that's in his first year as a starter, I thought he did a decent job, only getting sacked twice. Georgia was on him all day. That was coming. Kirby Smart, and I'll tell you, Kirby tipped his hand on his coaching show last Thursday night. And this is what made me realize that Georgia was going to have a very aggressive game plan for Florida that they hadn't necessarily shown against Kentucky or South Carolina. Kirby said they're going to make some plays. That told me everything I needed to know. He was going to take some chances defensively. What I didn't know was that Kirby would also be ready to take some chances offensively. Now, you may have been watching the game and watching how Georgia was pounding it. I thought DeAndre Swift, the numbers say 85 yards, but I thought that was one of the finest performances of his career. And that 30-yard run he had is one of my favorites. You know, he hurdles a guy that slices through the line, and he runs through traffic. And I'm thinking, that's an NFL run. Some of the runs that he's had, you know, or Holyfield had last year, or Harrington had, these guys don't get touched until 7 yards downfield. Okay, that's not real life. That's not going to happen in the NFL. It's hard to evaluate a running back who's not getting touched until he's at the second level of the defense. Swift was running into some traffic, and he converted 3 times on 3rd and 1 in that football game. And it was a different Swift in short yardage these last couple weeks than what we saw the first half of the season. Swift started out 2 of 7 on 3rd downs. And I wrote that big article about that. And I wrote those numbers. And I talked to Swift about it. When you write stuff like that, you got to be upfront with the guy. You got to look, man. I wrote that story, man. I'm just letting you know. I don't know what the deal is, but, you know, I got to write that story. That's my job. Swift gets it. You know, I get it, man. You know what? Swift has been on fire in short yardage. And, man, he was putting his shoulder down and going into a brick wall in those short yardage runs. And I was so impressed because he was running through some bodies. And we're seeing a better, stronger, more physical version of DeAndre Swift than I could have envisioned this year. He is really carrying the load. I didn't know that he was going to be able to do that. I had my questions, but DeAndre has really proven himself this year. Somebody in the NFL is going to get a great back. Lawrence Cager. You're seeing those pictures of Cager. You know, I don't know if I told the story here last week, but it's worth telling again. One of the neat things that we do at Dog Nation, I mean, obviously Jeff Santel does a great job with the recruiting coverage, but one of the neat things we do at Dog Nation is our Next Generation series. And that's when I go out and meet these players before they arrive on campus and go to their homes or go to their high schools, talk to their coaches about them and kind of get an idea of who they are away from all the football, the football wall. You know, because when you talk to a guy with 8 other reporters around, it's hard to get a sense of who he, like Jake Fromm, right? It's hard to get a sense of who Jake Fromm is by his interviews with media. Jake is very polished. He's very political. He's not going to show you or tell you very much in that setting, nor should he in that setting. But when you meet a guy away from all that, away from all the noise, you get an idea of who he is and where he's at in life. And Dog Nation went down to South Florida last May, and I got to spend a few days with Kenny McIntosh and Lawrence Cager. And Lawrence Cager, this was interesting because Cager hadn't really talked to anybody, and I'd reached out to Cager a couple times via Twitter and never really got a response. I had been told by someone at the Senior Bowl, Dog Nation has a very good relationship with Senior Bowl. We go down there and cover games and meet NFL personnel. And the Senior Bowl people and the NFL personnel people, they can tell you who the players are because they're looking at them. And the person told me, hey, this Cager guy is somebody that's on NFL radar. There's a lot of teams that are very interested in him. But when you picked up your preseason magazines, there wasn't anything about Lawrence Cager. He wasn't on anybody's list of impact players because Lawrence, I don't think he'd ever had more than 22 or 23 catches when he was in a season at Miami. Now, Miami had gone through some quarterback issues, and Lawrence had gone through some issues. He had a knee injury that derailed what was supposed to be a very promising sophomore year. So when I went down there to talk to Lawrence, and he opened up, once I did the Kenny McIntosh interviews, the McIntosh family knew Lawrence and said, hey, you know, this interview's cool. There's a lot of Georgia fans. You know, this guy's just going to bridge the gap between you and the Georgia fans. So this was Lawrence reaching out to the Georgia fans doing those interviews. It wasn't reaching out to me, okay? I'm just a reporter. I'm the vehicle for the player to get to know the fan base. I'm going to ask the questions the fans want to know. We're going to provide the video and the coverage on Dog Nation, and that's how it worked. And so Lawrence wasn't in school anymore at Miami. He had already graduated, and spring football was done. So it was, hey, come to my apartment. And so I went to Lawrence's apartment. He shared it with a roommate. and in Coral Gables. And it was interesting because, Lawrence was all packed up. I mean, his life was literally in 4 or 5 boxes, and I'm sitting there realizing that this young man, he's got a college degree. He is putting his entire future and trust into the University of Georgia and Kirby Smart. He's got 1 year to make it happen. His career at Miami was not such that he would be drafted into the NFL. His measurables were, but it would have been dicey. He would have had to go to the combine and put up ridiculous numbers, but the film wasn't really there. Not enough film was there. The best bet for him professionally was to invest his career somewhere for a year. He needed to go somewhere where he knew he could trust the coaches, somewhere where he knew he would have a stage to present himself in the best potential light. He knew James Coley because James Coley was at Miami Lawrence's freshman year and recruited him out of high school. Kirby Smart also recruited Lawrence when Kirby was at Alabama. And there's a story up on Dog Nation right now, the deep dive story we did when we went down there about Lawrence, who he is, where he came from, the sport that he thought he was going to be a star in. It's not basketball. And did you know he can high jump 7 feet? All sorts of interesting things in that story, the flashback story on dognation.com. In that entire video you're looking at right there, that in video in its entirety. And by the way, I apologize that I'm wiping my brow often in this video because it was about 100 degrees there. It looks beautiful. We're on the Miami campus, and I can tell you that is an incredible place. Looks like botanical gardens more than it does a college campus. But wiping my brow and sweating fervently, feverishly, I should say, as I interview Lawrence Cager there in our sit-down interview on camera. Because we talked in his apartment for a couple hours as I was, saying, okay, well, who are you? Where are you from? And I said, Lawrence, let's go on campus. We usually do some video. We did that video, and we did another video in front of the U, the signature U that's on campus with Lawrence. We did a couple stand-ups. So, but to hear a kid at that point in his life putting so much, investing so much in an unknown, really kind of made me sit back and realize, what type of communicator Kirby Smart is, what type of recruiter Kirby is. When he says to Lawrence, hey, we need you. And Lawrence buys in. At the time, J.J. Holloman was still on the team. Actually, J.J. was going to be Lawrence's roommate. Of course, we all know J.J. ended up getting dismissed a month and a half later. And Lawrence had to kind of assume a leadership role in that receivers room. I think Tyler Simmons does a good job with it, but I think the players really respect and like Lawrence. In fact, I was talking with Jordan Davis after the game, and nose tackle Jordan Davis, and just said, hey, what do you think of Lawrence Cager? And he's like, oh, man, he's always working late. He's always trying to get people to work with him. He said, in fact, I was racing him just the other day. I said, you were racing him? He said, yeah, Lawrence was working on his get-offs. He's 10 years. And he said, come on over. He wanted Jordan Davis to race him. So Lawrence is getting this 360-pound nose tackle to race him in these 10-yard sprints after practice. And what he's really doing is helping Jordan Davis maintain his weight, but constantly trying to get teammates to stay late and work with him. This is what you call a catalyst. This is the type of player that makes a difference in a championship season. When you talk about infectious energy and enthusiasm and charisma, that's one thing. But when Lawrence is reaching out to a sophomore and Jordan Davis saying, come on over here, big man. You need to race me and see if you can beat me in a 10-yard race. He's helping Jordan Davis help himself. And he's doing that with cause. And that's why last week, because we didn't know to what extent Lawrence would be able to play with that separated shoulder and those bruised ribs. You knew it had to be pretty bad for him to leave the South Carolina game at halftime, which, by the way, they don't lose to South Carolina if Lawrence plays in the second half. For all the people that talk about the committee and they take injuries into consideration, they need to take that into consideration because Lawrence Cager had 3 third-down conversion catches in the first half of that South Carolina game. If he plays the second half, Georgia wins. Now, he didn't play against Kentucky, and Georgia had 35 yards passing. More of that had to do with the rain. But you saw the difference that Lawrence Cager made against the Florida Gators. 7 catches, 132 yards, and a back-breaking 52-yard touchdown catch that I felt really lifted Georgia. Gives them that 24-10 lead. It was a different game after that. The final score says 24-17. But anybody who watched that game knows it was not that close. Now, you can argue, about the Georgia defense and should they have gone into that prevent. But I would point out the 37-yard touchdown run by DeAndre Swift that got called back. If that play doesn't get called back, it is lights out. It's 31-10. But that play got called back by what I thought was a bad holding call. It occurred behind the play, did not affect the play. Really rough day for Matt Landers. Had a potential touchdown that he didn't lay out for. Then he gets called for a hold. It cost him 7 points. This is a kid that really, really needs a break. He needs a good week of practice and really needs to step it up. It's been a tough year for Matt Landers in that receiving corps. But my point is, Georgia, the final score says 24-17, but they were in control start to finish. Look, going into the fourth quarter, Florida did not have a third down conversion. Florida had -9 yards rushing through 3 quarters. Now, once Georgia, like I said, went into that modified prevent where they're trading yardage for time, saying, yeah, go ahead, throw the ball in front of us. We just want to keep the clock running. That's when Florida kind of picked up all those garbage yards and really garbage touchdowns. They had a nice fourth down conversion en route to the touchdown. I thought the Swain kid, Freddie Swain, was, I don't know what more Eric Stokes could have done to cover him on those slants. I mean, pretty much an indefensible play when the quarterback puts it on the money. That's why I said Trask was legit. But Dan Mullen wasn't. Dan Mullen failed in this game. He had he called 2 timeouts on that opening drive. I thought, and we can all go back and say, what did you think the biggest play was? Some people would say the Cager 52-yard touchdown. Some people would say it was Eli Wolf coming through, another graduate transfer. Comes through with that unbelievable catch on 3rd and 7, and Jake's throwing it flat-footed against the blitz, and somehow Wolf adjusts to the ball in midair, modifies the out route, finds the hole in the zone that Jake's throwing to, and comes down with it just beyond the fingernails of a Gator defender. Incredible play by Eli Wolf. So you could say 52-yard catch by Cager, 22-yard catch by Wolf. The Harrion catch was remarkable. Cager had a remarkable catch. I like DeAndre Swift's 30-yard run. Azeez Ojulari sending the message with the sack on the second series of the game. Jordan Davis, Malik Herring with the sack. Malik Herring and Monty Rice with a 3rd and 1 stop at the Florida 19 made Florida punt the ball away. Georgia cashes in on the ensuing possession. But the most important play of the game to me was 4th and 1 at the Georgia 39. I believe it was the 39 when Richie LeCount was matched up with Kyle Pitts, the 6'6", 240 tight end, in the flats, and number 2 knocks the ball down. Slams the door shut on what would have been a game-opening, tone-setting drive. And Richard LeCount, Rat Trap Richie, the guy that we've all at different times seen out of position here or there, makes what I believe is the biggest play of the game. And if you're going to call Richie LeCount out when he gets beat, and here's the thing you need to remember. I want to make this clear. When you get beat at defensive tackle, when you get beat at line, it doesn't always show up. We don't always know it. When you get beat at safety, it's 7 points. So I don't think Richard LeCount has had any more busts or bad plays than anybody on that defense. Probably a lot less, in truth. But because of the nature of his position, it's a lot more flagrant. It's like the umpire. You don't notice the umpire until he misses a call, right? Same thing with cornerbacks. You don't really notice them. You don't really hear their name much if they're doing their job. Same thing with Richie. But in this occasion, Richard LeCount, 4th and 1, perfect technique on a 6'6", 240-pound NFL tight end on a very well-thrown ball on the opening possession. And Richard LeCount was there to reject it. That was an NFL play by Richard LeCount. He will be playing on Sundays, folks. Big-time play by Richard LeCount. To me, I thought that was the biggest play in the game because it set the tone for Georgia. It let everyone know that this Georgia defense was for real. A lot of people had questioned the Georgia defense. Well, Who have they really played, we were told, especially after Notre Dame laid an egg in that rainstorm in Ann Arbor. Now, just say this. You know this. I know this. I don't know what the playoff committee is going to know or not know, but so much of when you play a team or so much of an outcome has to do with when you play a team. Are you catching them at a good time? For example, catching Vanderbilt in the opener is not a good time to catch Vanderbilt. They're undefeated. Everybody's healthy. Their lack of depth is not an issue. That's a tough opening game. You'd rather play Vanderbilt like now that their season is pretty much over with, right? So you could say the same thing about Missouri. You could say the only thing is Missouri's coming off a bye week. That's why the line's only 14.5 points. And the other thing that bothers me about Missouri, while I'm on this tangent, Kirby Smart talks about sharing ideas with Barry Odom. He talks about sharing ideas with Will Muschamp. He talks about Tom Herman and sharing ideas. In fact, they let Texas come to their spring drills last year before they played them in the Sugar Bowl. Kirby, stop sharing ideas. You lock the media out of your practices like we're Russian spies, but you let Texas in and you share ideas with Missouri and South Carolina? What am I missing here? I know Kirby thinks there's no secrets out there, guys. There's film. But I think Kirby underestimates his wisdom. I really do. Again, only 43 years old. And that was shown. Look at the picture of Kirby there. That's a young man celebrating right there. You don't see Nick Saban running around looking like that. Did you see the locker room video? Is polished and is professional and is CEO-like as Kirby is when he deals with the media and when he's in the public eye. I thought it was really cool to see that 43-year-old guy celebrating in the locker room. That's what youth does for you. Kirby is a young 43-year-old young man. He is. He's still young. He's only 43 years old. Compare that with some of the coaches he's coaching. What is Nick Saban now, 68? I think his birthday was on Halloween. Kirby's young enough to be his son. And that's who he's recruiting against. That matters. Players like younger coaches that they can associate with, that can kind of get down and dirty with them in the locker room and some of the pregame talk. You've seen the videos. To me, that's fun stuff. That's exciting to watch Kirby go off. And it wasn't that long ago he was playing. I mean, he's a player in 1999. 20 years ago, he's still putting them on. He's still lacing it up. So a lot of good things come out of that win over Florida. And tonight, the college football playoff. I want to go to take a look at the website, and I want to see what some of your questions or comments are. By the way, had a chance to meet some really cool people. Eric, Holly, I had a chance to meet you down there in Jacksonville at the Dog Nation Invasion. Really appreciate the opportunity that my boss gives me to meet people at those type of events. So hopefully when we have our next one, and I'm sure there will be a next one, you'll come to that and have a chance to meet me and BA and Jeff and Connor as well, as we like to interact with the fans, kind of hear your opinions. I had some people tell me, hey, I really like it when you do this. I'm not a big fan of that. I really wish you could tell me more about XYZ. As a reporter, you're always trying to anticipate what people want to know. And it's the constant give and take between tell the people what they want to know, tell the people what they need to know, tell the people what they should know. You want to make sure you check all those boxes and always looking for feedback on what you want to know as Georgia football fans or as basketball fans. Because tonight, it's the start of the Ant-Man era. And I can't wait. It's going to be exciting. Appreciate you watching this here on our Ingles on the Beat segment. Stephen Carr, Mike, do you think that Georgia wins out to the SEC championship game? I do. I do think Georgia will win out. I do think that you're in for some more close calls, though. I do think Missouri is a tough matchup. Kelly Bryant at his best, very dangerous quarterback. This team handled South Carolina earlier this year. And you know that Kirby and Will Muschamp have very similar philosophies defensively. Missouri handled South Carolina earlier this year. I don't know what the weather's going to be like. I don't know if Georgia will be able to throw the ball. I don't know Cager's status. I know he was playing wearing it like a Kevlar vest to protect those ribs. I don't know how this guy's playing right now, as unhealthy as he is. Man, what a warrior. You better believe these NFL teams are noticing that. But if Georgia needs to throw the football, I think they're going to need Lawrence Cager. Jimmy Miller wants to know about Tyson Campbell or about his turf toe. Jimmy, your guess is as good as mine. I really thought Tyson was going to play in this game. He warmed up before the last 2 games. He warmed up before this game. The way Kirby mentioned, and Kirby kind of mumbles and he like leaves words out in his quotes. A lot of people tell me, hey, you're missing a word and you're still. No, that's just Kirby. He leaves words out when he talks. A lot of super intelligent people are like that. He's thinking so fast that he's not hitting every word because his brain is like on 73 RPM when we're all on 45. I mean, Kirby Smart is, I don't know if genius is too strong of a word, but he's an incredibly intelligent guy. I mean, he is way ahead of the pack on how he processes information. I think that's what makes him such a great head coach. But he said they thought Campbell could have gone if he was needed, but he wasn't 100%. The way I read that, and I believe me, I think I speak Kirby as well as everybody, as well as anybody. I listen closely to everything he says and go back and read over it and really try to understand the guy. I think what he's saying is if DJ Daniel had been getting abused at corner, they would have thrown Tyson in there, but Tyson would have been an unknown. You know, it's kind of like when they played Isaiah Wilson in the second half of a game at right tackle. We thought he could go, but we weren't sure he went. He did okay. You know, at cornerback, if you're a little bit off, you're a lot off because you got to think about the kind of guys you're covering. And, and that's another one of those positions. If you get beat, everybody knows it. There's really no room for error there. I feel like you've got more of a margin for error in the trenches than you do at the skill positions. So in my mind, I think Campbell could have gone. And Kirby said that, but they don't want to put him out there too early unless it was an emergency situation. Look, they had to beat Florida. I'm not sure what the mindset is for Missouri and Tyson Campbell. If it's close, do you play him? Because you don't want a reoccurring injury. You bring the guy back too soon and you lose him for the year, it's done. And you don't want that because you need Tyson Campbell to beat Alabama or LSU in the SEC. You need Tyson Campbell. If you're going to win a championship, you need a healthy Tyson Campbell. And so Kirby is not going to take any chances that he doesn't absolutely have to take of bringing the kid back too soon. So if Tyson's not 100%, if he's 97%, the head coach is going to balk at it and go, especially when DJ Daniels done such a great job filling in for him. And I say you're going to need Tyson, not because I think DJ will fall off against these teams, but because they're going to go 4 and 5 wide. And you're going to need those extra DBs and those extra cover guys out there. So it's going to be very important for Tyson Campbell to get back. No doubt about it. Ronald Revels, Derek King could pair with Zamir White and James Cook. Could see that. I would say, Ronald, don't forget about Kenny McIntosh. I think Kenny McIntosh. Joel Torres says need to get Zeus more reps. I'm going to disagree with that on the Florida game. Nobody was going to carry the ball better than DeAndre Swift. And the catch that Brian Herring made, Brian had 4 catches in that game. Brian has shown me another element to his game that I believe will put him on an NFL roster. I think Brian Herring, and I said this about Holyfield last year, very borderline for the NFL. And here's why. Not because of who he is or his heart or his numbers. He's putting up great college numbers. But because of his size. He's not a big guy. And there's a lot, like Holyfield, not a big guy. And if Brian doesn't run a sub 4.5 40, there's not a lot of guys floating around in the NFL at 200 pounds that don't run a sub 4.5 40 unless you have a unique skill set. And Brian Herring is showing all of us that he has a unique the catches that Brian made, not just the diving catch. That was big, and that was unique, and that should be something that everybody always remembers from that game. That was one of those plays that could be on an oil painting. It was a big-time play by Brian. But he made another catch on a swing pass where he had to reach behind him while running full speed, and that's an NFL catch. Okay, that's not a college catch. That's an NFL catch. Brian Herring has an NFL skill set. Now, I don't know how he's going to interview, and I don't know what team's needs are. I don't know what number he's going to run in the 40 or in the 3-cone drill. But Brian has shown another element to his game that I believe raises his draft stock. Okay? Last year, I said I didn't think early in the season that I wasn't sure if Elijah Holyfield would be an NFL player because he lacked breakaway speed. He made the Panthers as a free agent. He just kept working his ass off, and teams noticed that, and he's a locker room guy, and I'm thrilled for Elijah that he has found his way to the league because it's hard to do it on heart. You know, you see the Disney movies, and it looks good there, but in reality, these guys want metrics, and they're looking at cold, hard numbers. So for a guy like Elijah to make it after running a 4.8 40 tells you a lot about his character and his heart that you probably already knew. Now, Brian, I think, is faster than Elijah, and I think I know he's a better pass catcher. Not quite as maybe as big or as physical, but it's still early. I'm not counting Brian Herrien out. I'm telling you that right now. We're talking strictly about his draft stock, and I'm telling you he raised it, and he showed another element and another level to his game that I think is going to put him in the league. Now, there's a long way to go. There's still games left. Hopefully, Brian gets a Senior Bowl invite. I know he was on the borderline for that. You're looking at Rodrigo going to that game. You're looking at Cager going to that game. Tay Crowder, I think, got himself back in the picture of going to that game. I think Herrien has been on the perimeter of going to that game. I think Brian's chances went up with his performance. And that game doesn't necessarily get you in, but it puts you in front of all the NFL teams. And so very important for Brian to finish the season strong for his professional prospects. Now, reeling it back in, there's a team that's trying to win a championship. But it all goes together here, folks. This is what you've got to understand. The players are serving the university and representing your school and playing for one another. You know, it's not, Cager with that shoulder, he's taking a chance. He's doing it for these coaches that believed in him. Brian Herrien is putting it on the line every Saturday for Georgia right now. The fringe benefit is that he improves his draft stock, but it all goes together. The school helps them get to the league, right? They help the school get to championship games. And that's the great thing that's happening at Georgia. There's a lot of buy-in to the team. What's best for the team first. The other stuff takes care of itself. I'm just commenting on it. But the buy-in is to win a championship. And guys like Brian Herrien and guys like Lawrence Cager, seniors making plays. And this is what wins games. Not X's and O's. Not whether or not Kirby should throw it 30 times. Not, look what Alabama's coaches are doing or look at the scheme that forget that. It comes down to players making plays, man. It comes down to moments like Brian Herrien gave you with that catch that I'll never forget. In fact, go to dognation.com. There's a picture. Brian's in midair and the ball's between his hands, and his hands are 8 inches apart from the ball, about a foot off the ground. Somehow he catches the ball. I don't know how. I've never seen a catch like that. Lawrence Cager, the catch, the juggling, guys making plays. Not about the play call, not about the scheme, right? It's guys making plays. When the game's on the line, it's Richard LeCount covering a 6'6", 240-pound tight end, somehow reaching across that guy and knocking the ball loose. The Trask puts on the money. It's Azeez Ojulari beating a 310-pound lineman with his quickness and his speed and his determination to make a play. It's Tay Crowder, who didn't get a tackle recorded, but you go back and watch the game and watch number 30 and watch him stick his nose in the hole. Let me tell you, Tay took some shots, man. He filled his gap. And that's what football is. It's not running around crazy and just chasing the ball. You've got responsibilities. And 30 was hitting the gap. And when 30 fills the gap, that back's got to bounce it. He's got to go somewhere else. So even though the stat sheet doesn't show Tay with any tackles, he still did his job. It's the nature of the game. You fill your gap, the play spills somewhere else, and someone else comes up and makes the play, whether it's Monty, who had 9 tackles, Monty Rice, whether it's J.R. Reed coming up, whether it's Richie LeCount, whether it's an end collapsing or somebody coming in backside pursuit. So you can't just look at the tackle numbers. Tay Crowder is having a heck of a year. I don't know if you saw the semifinalist for an award. Big year for Tay Crowder. When your seniors are making plays like that, that's when your team is at the best. When the seniors are showing up, they're making plays and they're leading. And that's what's happening for Georgia. And that's why I predict that Georgia wins out in November. Not because James Coley is calling plays better or because Kirby Smart found some – listen, Kirby's Kirby, like I told you at the start of the show. Kirby is going to call plays and run a scheme that fits the players he recruited. He recruited these pieces and parts to fit in this machine. This is the Kirby Smart mobile, all right? What you had with the 5 injuries at receivers after losing 5 top receivers from last year was essentially a flat tire at the receiver position. You had guys injured, and you had lost players from the year before. And so your race car had a flat tire. And Lawrence Cager came back and pumped air back into that tire, getting healthy and playing in that game. That's what that was. It takes all these pieces of a football team to come together to form a race car, right? You can make the analogy, that the line play is the chassis, the quarterback is the driver, your linebackers and your ends are kind of that defensive end, the engine, right? Your receivers are maybe they're the tires on the car. I don't know where we'll put the running back. I'm going to say the running backs and the linebackers are the engine. The quarterback is the driver. The line play is the chassis. And special teams and receivers, I'll give them the tires. You can tell I was a running back and not a receiver. Receiving people, what do you mean we're the tires? We don't want to be the tires. We want to be, well, maybe you're the windshield. I don't know. But it takes everything. The bottom line is it takes everything for a football team to be efficient. And you want to build the fastest and best race car that you can. And I think Kirby Smart has done that. And that's why I think Georgia will win out. Now, I could be wrong. I don't think they'll lose to Missouri, but Auburn is definitely a losable game. The Auburn defense is legit. It will be the best defense that Georgia will play this season. It will be the best defense that Georgia will play this season. That's how good Auburn is, especially up front. That will be the ultimate test for the Georgia line and for DeAndre Swift and Brian Herrien. If Zamir gets a few carries, great. If Kenny McIntosh gets some carries, great. But right now, you're going to trust those older guys that have been there, and you're going to give them the carries because they've delivered. Okay, DeAndre Swift and Brian Herrien are delivering for you. They are playing as well as any running back duo in the nation. There's no reason to mess with that, just for funsies. Okay, Zamir's not there yet. He doesn't have the vision that DeAndre Swift has at this stage of his career. He doesn't have the hands that Brian Herrien does at this stage of his career. And he doesn't have the experience of either one of them. Now, that's not to say he's not going to be a great back, but right now is not the time to be getting that experience, okay? That happened in September. Right now, it's money time. Right now, the season is on the line. Every play. This is the sense of urgency that the Georgia Bulldogs are operating with. If there was a mulligan to be had, they spent it against South Carolina. This team has their backs to the wall. Let's take a look here. Any more questions? Roquan Smith was a natural, Phillip. I'm not going to put anybody in Smith's category. He was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. He was the catalyst for what I believe and will always believe was the best football team in the 2017 season. Georgia has not replaced him. You don't replace a guy like that any more than they've replaced DeAndre Baker this year. Okay? When you have greatness. Now, there's other great players emerging, right? So you lose Roquan Smith. You don't have a leader like that yet. I think part of what Georgia's, I don't want to say missing, but the area of this 2019 team that still pales compared to the 2017 team is the internal leadership. That's not to say they don't have good leadership. It's just that in 2017, they had phenomenal leadership. I think they have good leadership now. I think the leadership this year is better than last year. I think this team has better chemistry this year than last year. And let's just say it, because you don't have extra guys in the locker room that aren't playing and are unhappy, okay? Or at least key players. So you don't have that divide, that potential for a divide that you had last year with Justin Fields. That's just the way it is. This team has better chemistry than last year's team. But I still don't think they have and that's a tribute to Roquan, the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. There is not an SEC Defensive Player of the Year on this team. There's some good players, some very good players, some future NFL players. J.R. Reed, I said he's an NFL player. Richard LeCounte is an NFL player. Eric Stokes is an NFL player. Tay Crowder, I believe, is an NFL player. Monty Rice, NFL player. Jordan Davis, NFL player. Azeez Ojulari, NFL player. Malik Herring, this is going to be close. Malik needs to continue to improve. He's got the ability. He's starting to show the things that Kirby Smart knows he has in him. Had a really big game, but Herring is starting to get close to that NFL player conversation. Julian Rochester getting close. Tyler Clark. These are guys that will be in NFL camps. Okay, but where is the intangible? Where is the catalyst? Where the Lawrence Cager effect on offense? Who brings that on defense? I think that's why Kirby tabbed Azeez Ojulari as a captain as a redshirt freshman. I believe Azeez Ojulari is the next great. I think we're seeing it right now, but I think he's going to get even better. So I don't know if that answers Philip's questions and Philip Wells' observation, but that would be my talking about that. What else we got here? Someone said who said it? I don't know who said a bad word. I hope nobody said a bad word. We don't say bad words on here on Dog Nation. We try not to, at least. You're watching the On the Beat segment. It's brought to you each Tuesday by Ingles. I appreciate their support. I hope you appreciate it as well. You need to check them out. I was in one of their stores the other day. Incredible selection. There was a Starbucks in there. Sat down. I had my green tea, my secret. People said, man, Griff, you're always on the go. What do you do to I drink green tea. That's what I do. I drink green tea, and I go to bed early. It's pretty boring, but it works for me. So, is this defense deeper than the 2017 defense? Ronald wants to know. Probably. Not as dynamic, in my opinion, yet. They're number one in run defense and scoring defense and total defense, and number two in pass efficiency defense. But they're still growing. I think they can get, for example, J.R. Reed. Listen, I love J.R. I've met J.R. outside the team more than one occasion. He knows that I've got a lot of respect, but he's dropped 2 or 3 interceptions this year. J.R.'s got to stop dropping interceptions. He's got to make the picks. And I asked Kirby about interceptions. Yes, I mean, Kirby Smart had like 9 in 1 year, didn't he? I mean, so why does J.R. Reed only have 1? I mean, Georgia, I understand Kirby explained the scheme is such that when you play tight man, the ball's not necessarily in front of you. You're watching your man, and it's hard. Whereas in a zone, you're keeping everything in front of you. You can break on the ball. So it doesn't lend itself to as many interceptions as some other schemes. But yet still they've had a few opportunities. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. We've had a great show. I want to thank everybody for watching. Tonight, I'll be covering the game against thank you, Michael. I will be covering the Georgia basketball game against West Carolina at Stegeman Coliseum. I thought I brought my game sheet in here. Do I not have it in front of me? How many Georgia fans are going to be there tonight? I wonder if there's going to be a lot of Georgia fans. Let's take a look at this information. Tom Crean, Anthony Ant-Man Edwards, projected number 1 pick in the NBA draft. More hype than any Georgia player. Some said, well, what about Dominique Wilkins? Yes, we all remember the human highlight reel. But Dominique didn't come in with this much hype. I mean, this guy, here's the really cool thing. Ant-Man Edwards is a cool kid. Forget how good he is, okay? He's very good. He can do a lot of different things. He's got a lot of skills. He can pass the ball. He's a good shooter. He can elevate. He plays good defense. He's got good hands. But the coolest thing about Anthony Edwards is just what a neat guy he is. He is a very humble, charismatic young man. Georgia fans are going to love him. He is a tremendous ambassador for your school. I am very impressed with Anthony Edwards. And Tom Crean told us this the other day, and I didn't know this. This guy only turned 18 in August. He should still be in high school. I mean, you want to talk about a phenom. Anthony Edwards is an amazing young man, and I can't wait for Georgia fans to get to know him. In fact, when I finish this show, folks, I'm going to go ahead and pop up an Anthony Edwards video on our website. I'll do a short intro so you will have a chance to watch the interview that I did with him yesterday. Because we asked him, when you're that guy that everybody says is so great, how do you, and he's like, look, I don't want to hear that. I don't need to hear that. That's not who I am. He had an older brother who was an outstanding basketball player, and he watched how his older brother handled being in that starring role, and that's why Anthony is the way he is. Just a really enjoyable young man to talk to, fun to watch. And this Georgia team is going to have challenges on the basketball court. Rayshawn Hammonds, they're going to have to count on Rayshawn to do a lot of the dirty work under the boards. He's 6'9", power forward. He's got a good inside-out game. Tonight against Western Carolina, playing a very disciplined, experienced team. Should be interesting. And then, of course, Georgia goes to Hawaii, where they'll meet up with Dayton, possibly Michigan State, possibly Kansas. We'll learn about Tom Crean's team early, but watching Anthony Edwards, I can tell you this. I will honestly tell you this. The guy is worth the price of admission. Big-time player and a guy that you're really going to enjoy watching. So thanks for joining me. I need to get back to Athens. I need to get that Anthony Edwards video up for you to get to know this guy before tonight's game. I hope you guys enjoyed the Florida win. That was big for Georgia. It was big for Jake. It was big for Kirby. It was validation. Not that Kirby needed to prove anything, but he did. His style works when his players execute. That is the Georgia formula to win a championship. That is what they do best. That is what this personnel was recruited to do. It's not going to change 180. They're going to do what they do. And remember, LSU only beat Auburn 23-20. And I think Georgia is a better version of what Auburn does with great defense in the run game. So thanks for watching. Thank you, Ingles, for sponsoring On the Beat. Everybody have a very safe and enjoyable week.